The sun crept over the horizon, its golden tendrils reaching across the manicured lawns and casting gentle shadows on the rows of identical houses in our neighborhood. Each house stood like a soldier, prim and obedient, with yards that whispered tales of early morning mowers and meticulously pruned hedges. My own abode at the corner of Maple and Clarity was no different, save for the lone, weathered shed that perched at the edge of my backyard. It had stood there for years, a silent sentinel holding the secrets of bygone projects and forgotten tools. Karen, the self-appointed matriarch of the Homeowners Association, seemed to find fault in every corner of our suburban paradise. Her icy blue eyes scanned the neighborhood with the precision of a hawk, seeking any imperfection that might disrupt the homogeneity she so fiercely protected. It wasn't long before her gaze fell upon my shed. It began with a letter, a crisp white envelope slipped under my door, bearing the official HOA seal. Inside, the words were as sharp as the tight script they were written in, demanding the removal of my unsightly structure that allegedly violated the community aesthetic. I chuckled. It seemed Karen had found her latest crusade. I let the letter rest on my kitchen counter, the paper gradually curling at the edges like a leaf succumbing to autumn's touch. Each morning, as I sipped my coffee, I considered her demands, the absurdity of it all swirling in the steam rising from my cup. Moving the shed was simple, she'd implied, a mere matter of compliance. But simplicity wasn't a language I often spoke. Instead of tearing down my shed, I tended to my garden. I found solace in the earth, in the way the soil crumbled between my fingers and the scent of fresh blooms filled the air. My roses blossomed defiantly, their petals bold and unabashed in their beauty. Karen's next move was as predictable as summer rain. She appeared at my doorstep one afternoon, her silhouette framed by the sun, casting an unnaturally long shadow into my hallway. I let her stand there, a porcelain statue poised with purpose, before I invited her in. Her smile was thin, stretched taut over impatience. Words tumbled from her lips, a rehearsed speech about community standards and harmony, underpinned by a brittle civility. I listened, nodding in the appropriate places, my mind wandering to the rustle of wind through my trees. Her voice rose and fell, a symphony of control and order. As she left, another thin smile gracing her lips, I knew it was time to act. Not with anger, but with quiet resolve. Karen wanted change, wanted lines redrawn and rules enforced. What she failed to realize was that lines, like boundaries, could be fluid if you knew where to apply pressure. The next few weeks were spent in research, evenings illuminated by the glow of my laptop as I delved into property laws and zoning regulations. The legal language unfolded before me, a labyrinth of possibilities. I discovered a small, forgotten clause, buried in the historical records of our development, an oversight in the original property lines. It was subtle, a whisper of an error, but potent in its implications. The property line could indeed be moved, shifting boundaries in my favor, a legal maneuver that would extend my yard a full 10 feet into Karen's perfectly manicured domain. The irony was delicious, a dish best served with a side of quiet satisfaction. As I prepared the necessary documents, I imagined the look on Karen's face when she realized the implications. Her fortress of conformity would have a chink, a small but undeniable intrusion of reality into her pristine world. The shed would remain, standing proud at the edge of its new realm, a testament to patience and subtlety. With each passing day, my resolve solidified, as steady and unyielding as the oak tree that stood at the heart of my garden. The paperwork was ready, a quiet rebellion bound in a manila folder. I waited for the right moment, knowing that the best stories unfold in their own time. The new boundaries went unnoticed by Karen at first, a quiet triumph that lay buried beneath the crunch of autumn leaves and the gentle hum of suburban life. But not for long. She was a hawk, after all, ever vigilant from her kitchen window perch. Her gaze felt like a well-polished rifle, aimed with precision across the neighborhood. The first salvo came in the form of a letter, crisp, white, and bearing the official HOA insignia. It arrived in my mailbox, demanding I attend a meeting to discuss my unapproved modifications. The irony wasn't lost on me. She wanted to swoop in on wings of authority, feathers rustling with indignation. The meeting unfolded in a room that smelled faintly of old carpet and fresh paper. Karen presided like a self-appointed monarch, her voice dripping with the kind of authority only she believed in. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking allies among the gathered few. Her subjects, all ears and silent nods, were drawn by the gravity of her relentless gaze. Her argument was as intricate as a lace doily, spun from threads of half-truths and embellished with dazzling absurdity. The shed was a fire hazard. It violated the community aesthetic. It blockaded the migratory path of the neighborhood squirrels. Every word was an arrow loosed from the bow of her indignation, each more absurd than the last. I listened, absorbing her manufactured grievances like rain against a sturdy roof. It was amusing, in a way, watching her weave a tapestry of control from such frayed threads. The meeting ended, not with resolution, but with a sense of prolonged conflict, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Days passed, her efforts escalating into a flurry of citations, each more frivolous than the last. A weed that dared sprout between the paving stones, a garden gnome she claimed was unsightly. I collected these notices as one might gather autumn leaves, each a testament to her dedication. Her words spread through the neighborhood like ink in water, seeping into conversations and curling around corners. Gossip, a currency she spent with reckless abandon, painted me as the villain, the outsider encroaching on their pristine little world. Yet, beneath her staged performances and whispered campaigns, my quiet resolve remained unshaken. The property line stayed as it was, a silent testament to the boundaries I refused to cede. My land, my rules, even as she played her part with theatrical flair. In these moments, watching her efforts unfold, I found a certain irony. Her obsession was a storm, but I was the mountain, unmoved and resolute. Her fury crashed against me, the waves of her discontent dissipating into froth at my feet. Still, I couldn't help but wonder about her motivations. Was it power she craved, or simply the thrill of the chase? Perhaps it was both, a tangled pursuit of control and validation, a dance she led with fervor, but little grace. In the soft light of evening, as the world settled into quietude, I tended my garden, the edges of my newly defined world. Here, amid the rustle of leaves and the whisper of the wind, I found a measure of peace, a reminder that some battles are fought not with swords, but with patience and resolve. And so, the days continued, the neighborhood a stage, and Karen the unwitting performer. Her drama unfolded, but the curtain had yet to fall. Not yet. I spent the next few days in a quiet, focused haze, the kind that comes with knowing you're about to turn the tables. There was something satisfying in the anticipation, a slow simmer of justice that brewed beneath my skin. Karen was still prancing around the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, her self-assigned authority like a crown of thorns. Her latest conquest, my humble shed, still gnawed at the back of my mind. I decided to revisit the old survey markers, trusting the lines that had been drawn by my father decades ago, when the land was his realm. The markers were there, hidden beneath years of mulch and undergrowth, stubborn relics of a time before HOAs and manicured lawns. I documented everything: photographs, measurements, legal descriptions scrawled on yellowed paper. Each piece of evidence was a brushstroke in the portrait of my silent rebellion. The property line, I discovered, had been in the wrong place for as long as anyone could remember. A quiet secret nestled under layers of complacency and ignorance. It sliced awkwardly through a corner of Karen's yard, a sliver she never knew she occupied. It was a boundary she had unwittingly trespassed, her meticulously pruned roses now resting on my rightful land. I filed the necessary paperwork with the county clerk, a matter-of-fact procedure that felt almost too simple given its implications. It was like signing a contract with destiny, a pact with the universe that promised balance would be restored. I was patient, biding my time as the ink dried and the wheels of bureaucracy turned with lethargic indifference. Karen, oblivious to the shifting ground beneath her feet, continued her crusade. She left notes in neighbors' mailboxes, reminders of lawn height regulations and trash can ordinances. Her presence was a constant hum, an irritating buzz that lingered in the background of suburban life. Then the day came. An innocuous Tuesday, bright and crisp, with the air carrying the scent of possibility. I watched from my window as the surveyor's truck pulled up, its tires crunching over the gravel. They worked with quiet efficiency, their tools marking the earth with precision and authority. I could see Karen watching from her porch, curiosity giving way to confusion as the reality of her shrinking domain unfolded. The surveyor approached her, explaining with a calm professionalism that the property lines had been reestablished. Her face twisted through a kaleidoscope of emotions, disbelief the most vibrant of them all. In one swift motion, the boundary had been redrawn, a cosmic joke at her expense. She stormed over, fury radiating off her in palpable waves, her voice rising in a crescendo that shattered the morning calm. I met her gaze with serene detachment, the scene unfolding with a surreal, dreamlike clarity. I felt a flicker of empathy, the kind that comes from understanding the depths of her delusion. Her demand to move my shed had been a trigger, a catalyst for this inevitable reckoning. And now the field was level, the game reset. Her roses, once the pride of her garden, were now trespassers. She was a queen without a kingdom, her empire reduced to rubble by the slow march of justice. I remained silent, knowing that words were unnecessary. The truth was written in the land beneath our feet, a silent testament to boundaries finally respected. It was over. The lines were clear. The news spread like wildfire, yet the air remained deceptively still, as if the world held its breath, waiting for the storm. My neighbors, once indifferent to the invisible lines brushed across our lawns, now stared at them with widened eyes, as if they had sprouted thorns overnight. The boundary had shifted, imperceptibly, yet profoundly, like a tectonic plate quietly moving beneath the earth. The first to notice was old Mrs. Albright, whose garden bordered both mine and Karen's. She was the kind of woman who knew every petal and weed in her domain, the way a mother knows the faces of her children. Her eyes, alert with the subtle wisdom of age, flickered with curiosity rather than judgment when she saw the shed standing regally on its new perch. Change is a curious thing. It can creep in like a shadow at dusk, unnoticed until it envelops you. The boundary was just a few feet to the left now, a whisper of defiance in a world of conformity. Karen's reaction was a more thunderous affair, of course. It was in the way she stood on her porch, arms crossed, eyes narrowing as if trying to burn me with her glare alone. Her dissatisfaction was a living thing, turning in her gut, urging her to action. But action required a plan, and plans required time. In the days that followed, the neighborhood buzzed with a quiet hum of gossip, like bees in a garden of discontent. Most did not speak to me directly. Instead, they watched from windows, from behind hedges, their curiosity a palpable presence. It was an unspoken acknowledgement that the rules had been bent in ways they never anticipated. Karen had been their enforcer, their unyielding sentinel, until I shifted the ground beneath her feet. Civility kept the peace, thin and fragile as glass. I mowed the lawn, waved politely to passers-by, and maintained the appearance of normalcy. Beneath it, though, was a simmering tension, a low rumble like the sea pulling back before a wave crashes. I wondered if Karen felt it too, the anticipation, the waiting. Her retaliation, when it came, was a letter. It was delivered not by her hand, but by the trembling fingers of her husband, who seemed more messenger than accomplice. Typed, official-looking, with the HOA seal stamped in the corner. The words were precise and impersonal, demanding the return of the boundary to its rightful place. It was a command wrapped in the guise of a request. I considered my response. Battles are not always fought with swords and shields. Sometimes they are waged in whispers and glances, in unyielding resolve. The property line was a symbol now, a testament not of ownership, but of quiet rebellion. I could restore it, concede to the pressure. Or I could stand firm, holding my ground like a tree rooted deep against the storm. Karen watched from her window as I read the letter. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw not just anger, but something deeper. Frustration, perhaps, or the dawning realization that control was slipping through her fingers like sand. I folded the letter, placed it in my pocket, and turned back to my lawn. The decision was mine to make, and in the stillness of that moment, I felt a rare sense of clarity. The game had changed, but I was prepared to play it to the end. The morning sun filtered through my kitchen window, painting the countertop in golden hues. I stood there, coffee cup in hand, contemplating the shimmering surface of the liquid. It was a beautiful day, the kind of day that made the early spring air feel fresher, emboldening every breath. But beneath the quiet serenity, an undercurrent of anticipation thrummed through me. Today was the day everything would change. Since the confrontation with Karen about the shed, I had been biding my time, a patient fisherman, setting the perfect lure. Her demand had been ridiculous, but rather than fight fire with fire, I opted for a different approach, something more subtle, more final. The solution had come to me one evening, a quiet revelation amidst the chaos of her incessant notes and visits. I consulted with a surveyor, a man as meticulous as an artist with his canvas. He confirmed what I had suspected. The original property lines were not where Karen assumed them to be. Legally, the land stretched further than the neat artificial borders her HOA pamphlets proclaimed. With careful discretion, the necessary papers were filed, not a single detail overlooked. It was a chess game, each move strategic, every document a piece smoothly sliding into place. The satisfaction was quiet, a deep wellspring of calm that sustained me through the following weeks. I heard Karen's voice before I saw her, sharp, insistent, as though trying to slice through the very air. Her figure appeared beyond the window, moving with a precision that suggested she was hunting for something, anything, to critique. A shadow of annoyance flickered through me, but I brushed it aside. Today was not a day for anger. I stepped outside, the creak of the screen door announcing my presence. Karen's eyes locked onto mine, a hawk spotting its prey. But she faltered, momentarily thrown by the serenity she found there. I merely nodded, acknowledging her, before making my way to the boundary line. Or rather, the new boundary line. The surveyor's stakes were in place, their presence silent yet undeniable, lines drawn in earth and legality, undeniable and immutable. Karen's expression shifted as she followed my gaze. Confusion gave way to realization to disbelief. The boundary markers stood firm in their accusation. Her mouth opened, a tightly wound spring about to snap. But I raised a hand gently to forestall the coming storm. There was power in silence, I realized, in letting the truth speak for itself. Words could lie, could twist and turn upon themselves. But cold, hard facts, they were immutable. The moment stretched, the world holding its breath. Then, with a quiet resolve, I turned back toward my house. Behind me, Karen's figure shrank, the distance between us more than just physical. She was now a boundary unto herself, defined by her own choices, boxed in by her own rigidity. As I stepped inside, a weight lifted, leaving behind a hollow space filled with a unique kind of peace. It was done. The shed remained, nestled comfortably in its rightful place, an emblem of quiet defiance, of perseverance against pettiness. Through it all, I learned that sometimes the most powerful actions are those that require the least noise. In the end, it wasn't about the shed, or the yard, or even the boundaries we draw. It was about standing firm, knowing where we stand, and having the patience to let others find out for themselves. The morning dawned with a tentative light. After the storm of emotions that had swept through the neighborhood, thanks to Karen's relentless vendetta, the air felt expectantly still, as if it were holding its breath. My coffee steamed gently in my hands as I surveyed the backyard, the new property line now a reality that cut through the remnants of our shared history like an invisible scar. The previous day had been tumultuous. Karen's face, a blend of disbelief and indignation, had been unforgettable when she realized that her empire of control had shrunk, quite literally, overnight. By redrawing the line, I hadn't just moved a fence. I had moved the boundaries of her influence, a silent victory. As I sipped the dark brew, rich and grounding, I thought about the journey here. It had been a battle of wills, one that had started with a simple shed and spiraled into a war of principles. Karen had underestimated me, assuming her tyranny would go unchallenged. She was wrong. Walking towards the edge of my new property, I breathed in deeply. The air was crisp with autumn's promise, the leaves rustling in a calming symphony. The shed sat confidently in its rightful place, defiant against the backdrop of orange and gold foliage. It was more than a structure, it was a monument to resilience. The neighborhood was waking up, slowly, as if unsure how to navigate this new reality. The usual clatter of morning routines carried through the air, but with a subdued quality. A tentative peace settling over the cul-de-sac. I wondered if they saw it too. The subtle shift in power, the quiet rebellion that had unfolded in the shadows of their complacency. Karen's house, now slightly smaller in its territorial span, stood across the street like a fortress with its gates unyieldingly shut. I could almost feel her seething from behind those walls, plotting her next move. But for now, she was silent. Her absence was a victory in itself, her usual tirades replaced by an eerie calm. In the days following the revelation, whispers had begun to circulate, stories of her previous reign of terror mingling with newer tales of her downfall. The neighborhood, once her fiefdom, had started to find its voice. People nodded to me with newfound respect, a silent acknowledgement of the balance restored. The irony was not lost on me. Karen, who had always prided herself on maintaining order, had inadvertently sown chaos with her own hands. Her insistence on control had loosened her grip entirely, leaving her isolated in her own fortress of solitude. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows that danced playfully across the lawn, I knew this was more than just a personal victory. It was a lesson etched in the soil. A reminder that even the smallest acts of defiance could ripple outward, creating waves of change. The sensation was liberating. In a world where one voice could so easily be drowned out by the cacophony of demands, I had found mine, and in doing so, had allowed others to find theirs too. The community was learning to breathe again, free from the suffocating grip of micromanagement. A gentle breeze ruffled the trees, carrying with it the faint promise of reconciliation. Perhaps in time, even Karen would find her place in this new order, a place where mutual respect held more power than any arbitrary line ever could. But for now, she remained sidelined, her influence diminished to mere whispers. The irony lingered in the air, sweet and satisfying, like the coffee cooling in my hands.